for the first one. So briefly, so with emotional eating, I mean, we went over a lot of techniques and looking at why we did what we did. So, basically, stopping and realizing, one, that uh, a thought, everything starts with a thought and it creates a feeling, and then that drives the behavior. And most of that is unconscious, meaning we're not aware of it. So all of you guys made a conscious choice to have surgery, but then you have all of this unconscious behaviors going on. And a lot of times, people don't realize that the unconscious mind is a million times stronger than the conscious mind. So that's what you have going on. You make conscious choices, but we don't work with the unconscious mind. So these emotional eating classes are, I'm giving you tools and techniques that really bridge the conscious choices that you guys are making with the unconscious behaviors that are happening. So for you to understand, again, the unconscious mind is a million times stronger than the conscious mind, and we're acting off of the unconscious mind about 90% of our day, 90 to 95%. So if you're not doing certain things, that's why you might start something and then you find yourself going back into old habits. And a lot of times we'll be critical of ourselves and we'll say, oh, well, I'm weak or I'm not strong enough. And really that's not the case. It's just most of us are not aware of what we're working with. Most of us have never been taught the tools to really work with the unconscious mind and kind of and also bridge between the conscious and the unconscious so we can work together. And that's what these monthly classes are about. But it's very important that um, you do the work. You really implement, you do the work. I might be throwing some things out that you're like, oh, I don't think so, or this isn't for me. Um, and that's okay. But if you're doing the same things over and over again, I really would encourage you to be open to trying something new, even if it doesn't feel right. When you start a new behavior or do something new, it normally doesn't feel right. So, let's see. So for the Dawn, you're asking about the link. It is on YouTube, the NBC YouTube station that Nathan's posted a few times on Facebook, but it's not, for some reason, it's not playing right now. So I don't know if maybe it didn't get recorded properly. I'm not really sure. I need to find out about that, but hopefully we can get that fixed because it would be great for you guys to be able to listen to it, because these classes that I'm teaching each month will build on the class prior to. So it's if you are taking the classes, it's really important to actually do the work so you're prepared for the next class. Um, anyway, so let's get started on this. So basically, what I want from the first class, we were starting to explore why we do what we do. So like because we're talking about emotional eating. So it's like, okay, the very first thing of mindfulness or changing anything is awareness, becoming aware of why you're doing what you're doing. So it's like when you go to eat something, it's like, okay, am I hungry? And with surgery, it's hard to determine because you don't have the ghrelin. So a lot of times you just don't feel hungry. And but that does go away in time. So there's way, first of all, it's a process of trying to figure out um how you determine if you're physically hungry or not. And that takes time for some of you. But what you'll find as time goes on after surgery is whether you feel hungry or not, you just start incorporating old patterns. And so that's what we want to look at. Surgery definitely is the best and strongest tool for weight loss. But I always tell people surgery was in the stomach, not in your head. And long term, really those unconscious mental belief structures and thought patterns take over. And that's the people that don't work through those are usually the people that gain the weight back. So, and just so you guys know, for time's sake, last time I have another webinar, pre-op webinar at 11 o'clock today. So I'm not going to answer questions unless I'm asking something specifically for you guys to include or something I want to talk about. I will not be answering questions until the end, just for time's sake. So, because last month we went about 2 hours, so I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Alrighty, so let's get started here. So we're looking at how to change an eating habit, and ideally, it's around emotional eating, a behavior you currently have around emotional eating. So, so basically, first understanding that we're creatures of habit. So it's just, again, and this goes back to the unconscious loop that and basically when I use the word unconscious, or it's also sometimes called subconscious mind, basically that's just a filing system of everything that you've done. So it's easier for us to be on automatic. It takes a lot more energy and a lot of effort to stay conscious. So unless it's something that's really important to you and you're really utilizing tools to help you stay conscious, it's just going to be naturally, like I said, 90 to 95% of the time we're in unconscious mode, which means we're working off of this filing system of your whole life history, of your thoughts that creates feelings that drive behaviors. So, it's like, okay, things that you would normally buy at the grocery store, how you cook food, and that's, a lot of times even on the Facebook, I'll see questions like I always have, like recently I saw something where somebody said, well, I always cook my vegetables with bacon. Or somebody's like, oh, when can I drink wine? Because I always have wine, blah, 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 whatever. So this is all the unconscious mind talking. See, we want to go back to what we know. And with behavior change, it's about creating new habits, new behaviors, trying new things. You go to the same restaurants, we usually eat the same foods, we drink the same beverages. And this one at the end, we have a fear of the unknown. So remember, feelings from an unconscious state, feelings are driving your behaviors. The two biggest feelings that will help you change, is fear and curiosity. So the fear of the unknown sometimes stops us. Fear is one of the strongest feelings for whether you change or not change. Like sometimes people, like recently somebody posted something about they have a fear of gaining weight back. And so that is what motivates them to stay on track, but it can be exhausting because fear really takes a lot out of you. But fear is a very powerful feeling. So it can work in the positive or it can work in the negative. Okay, so tackling unhealthy eating habits. So this was something you were supposed to already work on from the last month, but I know a lot of you, this is your first time being on here. So becoming aware of the habits you want to fix. So looking at, stopping and saying, am I hungry? If the answer is no, you say, what is the feeling that I'm feeding right now? Because if you're eating and you're not hungry, you are feeding a feeling 100% of the time. So if you were on last month's class, write that down. Am I physically hungry? If the answer is no, what feeling am I feeding? And you really want to start to become aware of the feelings, the specific feelings, because you have to replace that. See, and what happens a lot of time with whether it's surgery, whether it's, you go on a diet, food plays a huge role on the emotional side. And when you take that food away, but you don't figure out what the food was actually helping you with, if you don't replace it, then you're going to go back to the food. It's a given. So you have to figure out all the roles other than physical nutrients that food has played a role in your life. And you have to start replacing and adding other things in place of that, because your body, remember, is based off of feelings. You're controlled by feelings, whether you're in tune with it or aware of it or not. So the habit loop is basically, there's a cue. There's some sort of trigger that creates a routine. Then you get a reward. That's a positive feeling. Remember, feelings are controlling the unconscious behavior. It creates a craving of wanting this positive feeling. And again, then a cue happens again. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a lady. She had gastric bypass, not even sleeve. So gastric bypass, people who have gastric bypass really don't feel hungry. And on top of not feeling hungry, they get physically sick if they eat like high sugar foods, fatty foods. So I was working with this lady, and so you have to remember at the core, what I'm explaining to you is also why surgery works. We make decisions off of feelings unconsciously. So if you get physically sick, that's a feeling. That creates pain. So that drives a behavior not to eat. But if you have a stronger feeling for something else, that feeling is going to win out. So each one of you on this call today has a different level of emotional eating. If the pain of overeating is stronger than your desire to emotionally eat, you'll be fine. If your desire for emotional eating is stronger than the pain, the emotional eating is going to win out. It all boils down to feelings at the end. And you don't want to have to rely on that's what you have to work on, changing these feelings. So you're in control of it instead of these feelings always controlling you. So going back to the example, so this lady had gastric bypass, and she had a really bad relationship with her father. But out of obligation, she would go, he was verbally abusive, and but she, out of obligation, because it was her dad, she'd go visit him once a week. And really early on, after surgery, she noticed every time she left her father's house, her thought went to, and she did this prior to surgery, her thought was, to go get fast food. Because fast food, like that Big Mac and fries, was a reward for her. It was like okay, you suffered through seeing your dad, so now I'm going to treat myself and feel good. And she found herself actually going to the restaurant, getting the Big Mac and the fries, and she didn't eat all of it, but in time, that's what would have happened if she didn't address this. And she still ate till she got sick. So she was in a place where the physical pain of throwing up or getting sick was not strong enough to stop her from emotionally eating. So she had to work through that. So you want to look and say, okay, when am I eating? Oops, did I go right? Let's see. You look at that pattern. That's the thing. As I talk, I want you to think about one thing, one habit that's emotionally driven that you want to work on. Because a lot of times we try to do too much at one time, and it does take a lot of effort and focus to change a behavior. So it's really more effective if you focus on one thing at a time. So that's what I'm talking about right now. Is is take a thoughtful or a mindful approach. So as I go through this class, I want you to reflect. As I talk, what resonates with you? What comes up? Hopefully, a specific thing that you do will come up. So you want a specific eating habit. That's why I want you to have the pen and paper. When something comes up, if you already know what it is, write it down. If not, as I talk and we go through the class, write down all the habits you think of, but you're going to want to pick the one you do the most. And I already talked about this. We'll go into this in more detail. So yeah, create a list of eating habits. If you guys are not already doing this, you don't have to do it all the time, but it is so helpful to journal. And whether you write it down or it's so easy just to use like My Fitness Pal, and if you have a smartphone, it's free. But to look at your patterns, because again, remember, the unconscious mind is you're working off the unconscious mind 90% of your day. So, and this happens over and over again. People will email me or call me and they'll say, Prudence, I'm doing everything you tell me to do. I'm not snacking. I'm eating my protein. I'm only eating 3 times a day plus my protein shake. And they're gaining weight. And I'm like, okay, well, let's journal for a week. And 100% of the time, I don't think there's ever been a time that somebody actually comes back and says, yeah, I'm doing exactly what I thought. Because we don't remember. We remember like, okay, this is, like we might remember the 1 or 2 good days, but we forget the rest of the time. Almost always people come back and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much I'm snacking. I had this one guy, it was really interesting. He was like, I absolutely do not snack. And he was snacking like 10 times a day. He did not realize that until he journaled. So to really see your patterns, it's really important for you to journal. Now, you don't have to journal all the time, but if you're not where you want to be and you have questions about how to change something, you always journal first. Just journal for 7 days and then take a look at that, and I can help you as well. So you want to become aware of why you're doing what you're doing. When are you eating when you're not physically hungry? What is it, again, what feeling are you feeding? You really want to know this. So eating too fast. So maybe people don't look at eating too fast as emotional eating, but you got to think, why are you eating too fast? Like one of the things that even for myself, I mean, the unconscious thought that was that tape recorder from the unconscious mind for me was, I'm so busy, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. And when I stepped back, I was like, I had lots of time. It's just that's the unconscious tape recorder that has been recorded for so many years. So that thought, I don't have enough time, creates anxiety, and then that drives a feeling to eat faster because you need to get to the next thing. Always cleaning your plate. This is something that's really difficult for a lot of people. They have that tape recorder from either parents or grandparents that you have to clean your plate. They're starving children. So whether you are eating at a restaurant, whether your spouse gives you a meal and you leave food on the plate and then they're like, oh, you didn't like it, whether it's your mom. I've had clients where the mom lived with them and she always made the food and she put the food on the plate, and would get very offended if they didn't eat all the food on the plate. And so, and it's interesting how we'll have surgery, but then we care more about taking care of somebody else. So we feel guilty or we feel bad. So it's like, you know what, I'd rather eat everything on my plate versus stand up and just say, no, this is all I can eat. Or if you're going to, let me serve myself. And so, but this is all emotionally driven. Eating when you're not hungry, that could be a variety of different reasons. Standing up, this is another thing. Usually I don't have time. Eating in your car might be one too. I've worked with a lot of people that they eat their meals, but they snack in their car. It's like this private place. It's safe. Nobody's there. Nobody can see them. And I've actually seen, I've worked with three women that really, before working with me, had gained quite a bit of weight back from eating in their car. You see dessert and you have to have it. Do you go to work and it's somebody's birthday and you're like, I have to have the dessert. And skipping meals is emotionally based too. So hopefully, again, you're thinking through things. Now, we are so critical of ourselves. It's just as important to see the good. You guys all have made so many behavior changes. So also have a list of what you're doing right. What healthy habits have you already created? Because if you can tap into that and you can say, oh my gosh, you know what? I'm eating 3 times a day now. I'm eating more vegetables. I'm making sure that I have my protein at every meal. Whatever it is, but you all have a long list of habits you've already changed. You stopped drinking soda. You're drinking more water. So it's important for you to write that down and have that list and read through it, because usually we stop something because we feel, again, it's emotionally based. We feel discouraged, we feel like a failure, we feel like it's not working. And so if you can go back when you're feeling this way and tap into, well, I've already done all these things. When you look at all the changes you've already made, all the healthy habits you've already incorporated, and you may have had a ton of healthy habits even before you had surgery. If you tap into that on a regular basis, it inspires and encourages you to do more. But on a automatic pattern, we focus on the negative. So this has to be something consciously that you do. You have your journal, you write down all the positives, all the good changes you've made, and you take the time a couple times a week or even daily to read through that. And then you want to identify, that's what we're doing today. We're identifying a few unhealthy habits, really one. I'd like you to identify one specific one that you are ready to work on. So we've already talked about some of this, but I just want to throw some ideas out there so you guys, before or after stressful meetings or situations at work. Like, probably one of the biggest things for me, and for some reason the hardest out of all the feelings, was the feeling of overwhelm. So if I had a project or I had a meeting or just anything that caused me to feel overwhelmed, like it was too big to conquer, I would eat. And of course, the situation was still there, but it was a temporary escape. It was like, Calgon, take me away for a few minutes. But, again, I've done what I'm teaching you guys today and really put the work into practice. And so now I have lots of other alternatives, which I'll share as we go through this. Coming home from work and not knowing what's for dinner. This is huge for a lot of people, and they don't even realize. It's like a few like a few crackers, or even the other day, I'll share, my daughter had licorice And I don't even really like licorice, and we went to the movies. I'd taken her to see Minions, and she was eating licorice, and then I had like 4 pieces, which you think, oh, 4 pieces, not a big deal. And then of course I put it in my tracker, and it was like 50 grams of sugar. I mean, I was shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, it was a lot of sugar. So, and so these little things in our mind, we think, oh, what's a few crackers? What's a few pieces of licorice? But they add up. So it's like, are you coming home from work and you don't know what you're going to eat? And so as you're planning or thinking through it, are you grabbing a few things? At work, again, you might, stop and, pick up a candy bar or eat a bag of chips. And, and is that the end of the world if you grab like a bag of chips? No. But it's more the pattern of doing it over and over and over again. And it's sometimes, and I posted this too, it's like, it's not about if you can or can't, but really, is this the best option to support where you're trying to go? Drive-throughs, those are triggers for some people. Again, you have this habit maybe of eating popcorn. Um, I had clients, which I thought was always interesting, and they would share. They would sit at night with their spouse, and these are post-surgery patients, mind you. And they would eat either popcorn or ice cream while they watched The Biggest Loser. Now, I thought that was really ironic. So, but that is, I mean, was quite common. I mean, I used to teach live classes in Las Vegas, and that just seemed to be the thing. Let's watch The Biggest Loser, but they were usually eating some form of junk food. Usually it was ice cream or popcorn. Again, we talked about the candy thing. Do you see candy and just pick up a few pieces? Chocolate. TV and emotional eating is huge. And again, bored. I don't have anything else to do, so let me distract myself and eat. So as we go through these, remember to be writing down what triggers you. What's the overall pattern, and what's the feelings that are driving it? Okay. So choose the trigger that you face daily or weekly. So I actually want to go back here for a minute. Let me see. Okay. For those of you that already have a behavior, can you share it? Go ahead and type it up real quick for me in the question box. Okay, so we have somebody, okay, good, yeah. So we have somebody that's eating too fast. We have boredom, eating too fast, waiting until I'm starving to eat. So, okay, these are all really good, you guys. So, boredom, night eating. Okay, since there's like a few of you that are sharing about boredom, let's use that for an example. So, hopefully that you're writing that down. So that's the actual behavior. Remember what I said. So the eating at night or eating when you're not hungry, the feeling, the trigger is the feeling. So the feeling of boredom. Boredom is a feeling. So now you want to ask yourself ask yourself some questions. So can I do anything? So whatever. If you're eating too fast, again, that's the behavior. But what's the trigger? What's the feeling trigger that drives it? Like, and one person mentioned they wait too long. And so then you have to say, okay, well, what causes me to wait too long? And so, can I do anything to avoid the situation? So if you looking at boredom, if you're getting bored at night, uh, what can you do about it? And, I'm as we go through this, and you got to be open to certain things. Like I had one lady I was working with, she was a single mom. She had a really young daughter, and she would put her, she had dinner with her daughter and everything was fine, did, homework. And then her daughter would go to bed at let's say 8 o'clock, and from like 8 to 11 or whatever, when she was going to go to bed, that's when she ate because she was bored. She didn't know what to do with herself. And so, and that had always been her pattern, but now she had had surgery and she wasn't losing the weight that she wanted because she was snacking. And, what worked for her is, joining some of these meetup groups, and she couldn't go out at night, but she still could talk to people. So she started developing relationships with people where she could talk on the computer, and that distracted her. And then she also created a new hobby. So yeah, first when I first gave her the idea of these meetup groups, she thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to do that. That's not for me. That was her first thought. But you guys are trying to create a new life for yourself. So this whole thought pattern of, oh, I don't do that. I don't join meetup groups. I don't do online dating. You might want to open up to new things, because her getting and joining some of these groups totally changed her life, because she could sit and chat with people and laugh and have fun, and she no longer had the desire to eat. So, being open and trying to figure out. So can I do anything to avoid the situation? So what can you create in your life that, or add, that would stop the boredom? Take a different route to work to avoid drive-throughs. Sit in a different place in the break room if you're right by vending machines, or it might be that you have to bring food in. For the person that shared that they wait too long, putting it in your phone. Like, I'm going to eat at these times, and you know what you're going to eat. Planning. And then some of that, especially with eating too fast, because it's a inaccurate thought pattern of this process of, I'm too busy. And some of you might, like, I work with dealers, people that are casino dealers, and they get 20 minutes to eat, and by the time they walk to the break room and they have to walk back, they get 10 minutes. So that's a real deal for them. And, if that's a case where you're in a work environment, you might have to, you choose when you're at work, you choose foods that are easier to eat, like cottage cheese. But breakfast and dinner, or whatever times where you can sit for 20 or 30 minutes, um, part of it is training yourself to be okay with it. What I did is I got a timer and I sat for 20 minutes, regardless. So if I finished my food in 5 minutes, I still made myself sit, and it does not feel right, and it does not feel good. And my mind was like, but I have all these things I need to do, but I sat. And over time, I trained myself to be okay with sitting for 20 minutes. So you just have to think, okay, what can I do to start this new pattern, or to stop the old one? So avoid buying sweets to have at home. That's really can be helpful too. If you're somebody who, um, you know, if you end up eating too much ice cream or candy, or like one of the things I did, I was a big one. I still love chocolate, but I trained myself to love dark chocolate. So I only eat 86%. That's the only thing I keep in my house. It's 86% dark chocolate. Now, did I love that overnight? No, I had to train myself. But nobody sits down and overeats on dark chocolate when it's 86% dark. There's hardly any sugar in it. So you just, again, you play around with things, but you find things that will work for you. And then for things I can't avoid, can I do something differently that would be healthier? We already talked about planning ahead, putting messages in your phone. Definitely preparing food helps a lot. Okay. Okay, this is really important to review what rewards you currently get from the unhealthy behavior. So I want you guys to tell me, let me open this back up. I want you guys to share, actually, I'm sorry, somebody shared, and I like this. Emily shared, I use Facebook games on the internet with people all over the world. So that's awesome. So she's connected on the internet and she plays games with other people. I love it. So sorry, little side distraction there, but I thought I would be good to share that. So now what I want you guys to do is, okay, you guys all have this unwanted habit, right? What benefit do you get from it? If it a if you're, remember, going back to it's always driven by a feeling, you wouldn't do it if there wasn't some sort of reward. There wasn't some sort of feel good. So what feel good are you getting from this pattern that you're currently doing that you want to change? Okay, Emily says false comfort. So this is awesome because she's identifying that she gets comfort from it, but she's, by her saying it's false comfort, false comfort, false comfort, she continues to, the more she puts false in front of it, she's identifying that it's not really comforting her in the bigger picture, which is a huge awareness. Anybody else? You have to really make this change, you have got to identify the feel good you get from what you're currently doing. Like eating too fast, like I had this pattern, like I said, and it was constantly like, I'm so busy, I'm always on the, and when I stopped and was like, there were some days I didn't have hardly anything going on for the day, but that loop, that recorder was still playing. And what's some feel goods you can get from that? The feeling of importance, the feeling of, if you're so busy, you don't have to stop to really think about your life and how you want to change it. That's big for a lot of people. A lot of people, it's easier to stay in this zone of I'm so busy, even if it's just the thought of I'm so busy that keeps playing in your head. And sometimes you really are busy, but you don't need to be that busy. But it's scary to slow your life down because then you actually have to really look at what you're currently doing. Look at your life. Maybe make some changes because you're not happy with the way your life is going. So this gets deep. It's not, if this was easy, we'd all be doing it. Julie says taste, instant false comfort. Absolutely. So this thought of it's going to taste so good. And a lot of times it doesn't. That's what I started saying. I love the idea of sweets. I go around saying, "Oh, I love sweets. I love sweets. I love sweets." And then people start asking me about different things and I'm like, "Most of the sweets I don't even like." And then I'm like, "You know what? I love the idea of sweets, but when I actually eat them, they really don't taste that great." Penny says, how long should you take to eat dinner? Ideally, you want to take 20 minutes. I mean, it depends on how much you're eating. I mean, some of you post-surgery are eating 1 ounce at a time or 2 ounces at a time. Obviously, that's not going to take 20 minutes. But if you're eating 6 to 8 ounces, like you're farther out, then yeah, you want to sit for at least 20 minutes. And because this whole concept of mindful eating, We're always in a rush, most of us. I mean, you look at like Europeans or other countries, I mean, eating is like this huge ordeal, and hours are spent. And so it's like sitting down and because if you actually took the time to enjoy your food, you enjoyed your surroundings, you enjoyed good conversation, you wouldn't have the desire to eat as much. But because we're eating really fast, our taste buds are in our mouth. So if you're eating really fast, and I love it. It was Julie who said taste, that instant. That's a perfect example. Let instead of, let's say you're eating peanut M&Ms. We don't, or Hershey's Kisses. We don't savor those. This is the concept of mindful eating, putting one in your mouth and letting it, really sucking on it. We're like chomp, chomp, swallow, eat another one, chomp, chomp, swallow, eat another one. And so then we overeat. But if you actually slow down, you savor the flavors in your mouth, you take more time, you look at your surroundings. What's the conversation when is it fighting? Are you talking about the bills? Are you talking about the horrible day you had? No, you want to say, you know what? This is a positive place. Associate as many positive things around eating as you can. Make it as enjoyable as you can. And again, that's going to be a satisfying experience, and you'll have less desire to eat. Um, when you're not hungry. And the other thing is you'll have more of a desire to sit because it's an enjoyable experience. Let's see. Yeah, this is a good realization too. Julie's sharing, people sometimes become hostile when I refuse to eat what they are. And that's a hard one. And because you know what, people, the majority, you have to understand, just now in the last 2 years, uh, um, the average American is for sure overweight. I think it's like 60 to 70% of our population is overweight or obese. But it just in the last 2 years, it's always been that we've had more overweight people than obese people, but now it's changed. We have more. So if you combined, I think it's some in the high 60s, 70s, if you combined obesity and overweight. So a very small portion, 30 to maybe 35%, is in a healthy weight range. So you have to look at all the people you're around and what's going on. And then now in the last couple of years, we actually have more obese people than even overweight. So the majority of the people you're around are overweight or obese, and you're in a different goal. I mean, even if you're still overweight or even if you're obese, you had surgery to get healthy. So it's like and usually if we're overweight, our friends are probably overweight as well. We tend to attract to similar patterns. And so this is a great example because it's not easy. So it's like getting new friends, and hanging out with people that eat healthy and are slimmer, just have healthier lifestyles. Because, and people don't do it on purpose, but it's unconscious. If you're eating healthy and they're not, it causes a guilt within them, and they may not even be aware of it, and that's where probably the hostility is coming from. um I once took, Jill is stating, I once took 10 minutes to eat creme brulee because I was savoring it. Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. That is the key, because with surgery, and you really want to be playful with this, it's really important. This whole diet mentality needs to be scrapped. I definitely believe in becoming aware of what you're doing, and that's why you want to track. But this good food, bad food thing, you really want to try to let go of that as much as possible. And, more from a perspective of, is this serving me? Is this helping me get to my goals? Yes or no? But when you start to judge the food, it on an unconscious level, it causes you to go more towards the bad foods, believe it or not. Or foods that you've told yourself forever that you can't have. Again, remember, thoughts or words create feelings that drive behaviors. But with bariatric surgery, the meal plan is 6 ounces. I mean, if you're under 8 ounces, you're fine, depending on how far out you are. But 6 ounces, 3 ounces of protein, 1 ounce of fat. This is really, really important because fat is what's going to help you stay satisfied. You take something like broccoli or eggplant or whatever your vegetables, and you go ahead and put some olive oil on it or slivered almonds, you bake them, totally changes the flavor of the food. It's much more enjoyable. So make sure you're adding your fat. But then you have 2 ounces that you get to play with. You want to play with it. It might be the creme brulee, it might be some peanut M&Ms, but it's like getting in the habit of realizing you can have these foods, but it's with your meal, and it's 2 ounces. And if you follow this, you could eat peanut M&Ms every day and still lose weight. I mean, it's amazing. But what you do is you train yourself, because a lot of us that have been on diets our whole lives, um, we have this I can't have it. So these foods are like, oh, we have these thought patterns like, oh my gosh, this is like the forbidden food. And once it becomes forbidden, we want it more. I did this exercise for myself. It was pretty amazing. Because going back, I love chocolate. And so when I first started that was the pattern I wanted to work on. I was eating a lot of sweets, a lot of chocolate. So I had 1 ounce of, and I used Hershey's Kisses, but I had 1 ounce of Hershey's Kisses with every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And this is something you almost have to go through. If you've been on this diet mentality for a big part of your life, you can't just say, oh, that's not going to be a forbidden food anymore. So how I had chocolate not be a forbidden food is I ate it every day, 1 ounce, 3 times a day. And I savored it. And it took me, this was years ago, but it took me I want to say about 6 weeks. And I was so sick of Hershey's Kisses. I mean, it was like, but going through that totally transformed my thoughts about chocolate. I mean, chocolate just was not a big deal anymore for me. And I used to binge. I mean, I could sit down and eat a big bag of chocolate, and I just don't do that anymore. Let's look. I have noticed that the real pleasure or the taste of food disappears after 3 bites. Dawn, that is awesome. That is so true. So I have this thing, I call it the 3 bite rule. And so it's very true. Between 3 and 4 bites of something, which is perfect. And this is why I love the bariatric meal plan, because you get 2 ounces of whatever you want. And depending on what it is, a lot of times it's exactly that, somewhere between 3 to 5 bites. And it's just enough to satisfy you. So that's awesome that you're aware of that. Oh, so Julie, she wants me to repeat. So the meal plan for bariatrics is 6 ounces of food. You want 3 ounces of protein, 1 ounce of a healthy fat, and then you get 2 ounces to play with. So that can be a carb, that can be a fruit, a vegetable, that could be your ice cream, that could be some candy. So, for example, sometimes it's just 1 ounce. It's a pretty amazing. Like 1 ounce of Hershey's Kisses is like 6 kisses. That's quite a bit, especially if you're savoring them. And then you also want so it's 3 meals at 6 ounces, and then either a protein shake or a protein bar. And I will tell you, if I'm craving sweets, and I have 1 to 2 shakes every single day, and I've been doing this for years. So sometimes I get sick of shakes, but then I'll eat a protein bar, and I really recommend the Quest bars because there's no sugar substitutes in Quest bars. They're probably one of the best bars as far as being healthy without all that crap in it, but they taste good. And so, if you're, and this is so, for those of you that eat at night, you're bored, why don't you do your 3 meals and then do a Quest bar at night? And you know what? Chop it up. I used to get these little tiny ice creams that were the hard little squares. I forget what they're called, dips or something. Anyways, they're tiny within themselves, but I'd take 4 of them and I'd cut each one up into 4 little slivers. So then I was getting 16 tiny little pieces of ice cream. It was hardly maybe 100 calories, I don't know, but it was enough to satisfy me. But you can take that protein bar, cut it up into small pieces, and you're just like as if you would grab popcorn or something, and you can grab a piece of your protein bar and eat it while you're watching TV. So you can kind of incorporate the meal plan into what you're doing. So for example, like if I'd go to the movies, it just depends. I'd decide ahead of time if I was going to eat something or not. I would pop my own popcorn, but I'd always take either a few cheese sticks. So for you guys, let's use the example. Maybe you want to eat food while you're at the movies. You want to enjoy the popcorn. So, you would take maybe 3 cheese sticks is 3 ounces of protein. You could take an ounce of nuts, again, depending on how far out you are. And then you have your 2 ounces to play with. 2 ounces of popcorn, I mean, that's probably you don't even need that much, but it's because popcorn is so light. But you could pop your own popcorn and put it in like a sandwich bag, and then you end with that. And then it's, what, you've snacked, it's a meal, but you feel like you're snacking. So you just kind of got to think through it and say, what can I do differently? Yeah, 6 ounces 3 times a day. So breakfast is 6 ounces, lunch is 6 ounces, and dinner 6 ounces, plus either a protein shake or a protein bar. So it's actually 4 meals a day, 3 meals and a protein shake or a bar. And you have to make sure you get that healthy fat, because if you don't, you're not going to get enough calories. That's how you get your calories in, is that 1 ounce of healthy fat. Are you a bariatric person? No, Julie. I was morbidly obese. I've specialized in bariatrics for like 12 years now. But I resonate with a lot of this. I lost 80 pounds. I didn't have surgery, but I had to, all this stuff I'm teaching you now, I had to do. So, I was a binge eater, emotional eater, food addict, whatever label you want to put on it, but did not have surgery. Let's see. All right. So going back, so that's awesome. So going back to this feeling of what's the benefit, because you're going to have to replace that benefit. So now you try to replace it with a healthier behavior. So let me go back. It's easier to use the examples you guys give me. All right. So some of you guys just identified it. You almost reframed your thinking. So I think it was Dawn, she reframed her thinking, so let's say her thing is emotionally eating or eating at night or craving sweets, but she now has identified on a conscious level that three bites is all I need to really satisfy me. It's not good after that. But the unconscious mind is controlling us, right? So what could Dawn do? Anybody can share, Dawn or somebody else. So what does she need to do to put that in the forefront? Because she consciously knows 3 bites satisfies her, but the unconscious mind is controlling us 95% of the day. So what would need to happen? What steps would need to happen for her to put that in the forefront so the unconscious mind doesn't take over? Anybody? So Dawn says, this is great. Dawn says, only serve myself the smaller portion, then get up and do something after. Yes. So start off just serving herself that versus get the bag. Yes, absolutely. That's perfect. So these are the steps for each one of you. I'm using examples, but you need to know the behavior you want to change. You're going to focus on and really give yourself at least 21 days that you're going to focus on just one behavior. And I got to fly. I'm already, gosh, it's already 10:28. Then you need to identify what's the feel good you're getting out of it? Is it comfort? And then again, also reframing it as a false comfort. That's reframing your mind right there. That's starting the change right there. But then you have to say, what else can I do? So it's like, what else can I do to get that same feeling? So if you know that you have this state of being busy all the time, you want to feel busy, and you say, oh, well, why do I want, what's the benefit of this constant feeling of being busy? Is it again another distraction from dealing with unwanted things in your life that are too big for you to handle? That's very common. Very, very common. And I'll share about myself. And I'm not an advocate of getting a divorce, but I was in a very abusive marriage, and I didn't want to. I, I just didn't want to address that. In my mind, divorce was not an option, and so it was like I was using food to distract myself from the bigger issue, and I had to work through those. I had to work through those because those are just beliefs. I had a belief you get married forever, but that was not supporting my overall health, overall wellness. And so I had to work through those things. That's not an easy thing, but that's what I needed to do. So sometimes we do all these things because there's something bigger going on in our lives that's just too overwhelming to address. And that's why usually people go back to the food, because they don't want to look at what the real problem is. Let's see. So Penny says, knowing you can eat whatever you want, but that 3 bites, 2 ounces is the limit. The way you can say, I can't have that. Yeah. So you don't want to ever say, I can't have that, because can't is like a victim. Once we tell ourselves can't, it's like we almost want it more. And, so it's like, I choose not to. So I'm choosing to have the 2 ounces, and I'm going to choose not to have any more. And just sitting with that. Sometimes just sitting with that might be fine. Sometimes I put up signs in the fridge or pantry to remind myself to think. Yes, perfect. So anything to stop you in the moment, and this is where you guys all have to play around and figure out, what's going to work for me. But you got to have the habit that you want to change. You need to know the feel good this unwanted habit is providing you, and then you have to say, what can I do in replace of it? What can I do instead of this? And I have to fly through some of this stuff now because I really wanted to go through some of the meditations. Hold on. Okay, so again, these are, if you're hungry, bored, in need of socialization, stress, then substitute the unhealthy food with what? So you're hungry. And one of these things I want to say, if you're actually hungry after bariatric surgery, look at your meal plan. More than likely, you're not getting enough protein or fat. I mean, even if I didn't have surgery, but I can almost eat like a bariatric patient if I'm getting enough protein and fat. It's pretty amazing. So usually it's because your foods are not balanced. Bored, again, joining a walking group. Somebody shared that they play games online. And this might be something new for you. Like when I first started to do the meetup groups, I mean, even when I moved here, I moved to Lake Tahoe like 7 months ago. I didn't know anybody. And it didn't feel really comfortable for me to join these meetup groups and go the first time, but now I have such a great support of friends. I have tons of activities that I'm always being emailed. So I have options. I mean, I go to probably a quarter of the things that I get invited to, because I join so many different groups. And the great thing about, if you guys aren't familiar with meetup.com, it's great because, like I have a guitar I wanted to learn to play. So they have, guitar groups, they have, beach groups, they have hiking groups. I mean, they have book reading groups. I mean, there's just so many things. So basically, whatever you want to do, they have it. Or, maybe you're married and you have kids, and it's like your pattern is to sit and watch TV. Well, you know what? As a family, let's change that. Again, it's not going to feel good, but let's walk to the playground. Let's do something, let's go outside and play kickball and sometimes it's just even for 30 minutes, but it's enough to break that pattern or break that cycle. In need of socialization, this is a big one for people who are overweight and obese, because a lot of times we don't socialize and it doesn't feel right to get out there. We may be being judged, but a lot of times we believe we're being judged or somebody's going to judge us. So and stress is a big one for a lot of people. And writing in a journal is huge. Breathing, meditation, calling a friend. And I really want to talk about meditation. Meditation is probably the strongest tool you can use to change all of this. And why is that? Meditate. So in the front of your, like if you were to touch your forehead, that's where we're being controlled most of the time. That's called your prefrontal cortex. And that's where all these dialogues are going on in our head. And so meditation slows that down. So remember what I said, from an unconscious state, we are driven off of feelings. Well, feelings come from thoughts. If you have a meditative practice, you just quiet the mind. That means you have less thoughts. That means you're going to have less automatic reactionary behaviors. If you don't have the thoughts, you don't have the feelings that drive the behavior. So and I saw somebody post on the group like something about it being religious or something. I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it's like, some people, if you're a Christian, you can, meditate on a quote from the Bible. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do, but this is scientifically proven for, I mean, now they're doing meditation to heal cancer. I mean, everything, irritable bowel. There's just so many things. So, I mean, it has crossed over, and being open to something new. When I first started, it was like meditate. Oh my gosh. I mean, there was like not a thought in my mind about meditation. But you have to be open to new things. All right. So we already talked about that. It's very important. The cue. What's your trigger? The reward, the feel good you're getting from that, and then the routine that happens. And once you identify that, you say, okay, what's a healthy thing that can provide the same feeling? Very important. And the other thing that I'll tell you is sometimes it takes 2 or 3 things to get that same level of feeling. Very important. All right, I'm going to go, you guys, to the meditation. So what I'd like you guys to do now is hopefully you're in a place that you can just sit back and relax. So put your pen and paper down. Just relax as much as you can. I want you guys to close your eyes. And I want you to just start to focus on your breathing. Inhale through your nose and exhale out your mouth. Bring all of your attention to my voice and then to your body. Just tap in, scan your body, see how you feel. And when you've centered yourself, I want you to think about this new behavior you're going to put into place. Actually see yourself doing it. Pay attention to the feelings that it provides. Really tap into those good feelings that you're going to get from this new behavior. Is it a feeling of satisfaction, accomplishment? Maybe you take it one step further and say, by doing this behavior on a daily basis, it gets me to what? You're a certain weight, a certain pant size, a certain energy level. But just bring that in, visualize it, and feel it. And just try to stay with that for a minute. If your mind wanders, bring it right back to that thought feeling state that you're focused on. Remember, you're inhaling through the nose, you're exhaling out the mouth. You guys can slowly open your eyes. So I wanted to give you a few exercises. You can do what you want, but it's you've heard the statement "seeing is believing." By you doing this little exercise we just did, you drastically increase your chances of follow through. Thinking about something is way different than visualizing it. Visualizing it almost is like it's like a pre-forecast. You're forecasting the future. And if you set your phone, when I first started to meditate, I set my phone for 1 minute. It does not need to be a lot of time. So you get two benefits. Well, there's a ton of benefits from meditation, but you're forecasting the future by doing this. You increase your chances of follow through drastically. But you're also training the mind, because your mind might wander and say, oh, I don't have time, I have to do this. You just keep bringing it back to the thought feeling state. When you meditate, you are training your mind to stop the chatter. Your mind is like a muscle, just like if you were to go to the gym. Meditation is the most effective way to get rid of that chatter that is driving all these unwanted behaviors. So that's one. This one, because of time, I'm going to skip it because I want to end with something else. But this is something you can practice. Again, you put your timer on for 1 minute. Think of the last thing someone did for you that made you feel grateful, made you feel good, whatever that was. But think about something somebody's done for you, even if it's the smallest thing. And what you do is you bring that thought feeling state up. You tap into that feeling and bring it right into your heart chakra, right into the center, and you intensify that as much as you can. And then what you do is this is a training, so if all you can do to begin with, some of you are going to have a hard time just closing your eyes and bringing up the thought feeling state. Your first thought might be, well, I can't see anything. Try to imagine it as much as you can, or you might say, I can't feel anything. A lot of people are in their heads and they're not able to tap into the feelings, but they're there. So if you're there, just keep working on that. And one day you're just going to be like, the feelings will come. But once you're able to visualize and you're able to create that feeling, intensify it as much as you can, and then maybe even hold it in your heart center. But when you're ready, this is all a level of training of the mind. You're directing outcomes. And it takes time for people that have never meditated. But then the next level is to take that feeling and imagine there's like a tube between your heart and your brain. And you bring that feeling that you have at the heart center, you bring it up through the tube into your brain. Amazing how you can create such a positive environment for yourself. If you struggle with anxiety, you struggle with depression, again, this is 1 minute, but it is amazing over time how you can create an overall happier well-being by doing something like this. Okay, and the last one I really would like you guys to do is go ahead and close your eyes. And again, just bring take a few deep breaths. Just bring your attention to your body. Bring your attention to your breath and inhale through the nose and exhale out the mouth. And I want you to repeat to yourself 10 times, I'm okay in every way and I love me. I'm okay in every way and I love me. I'm okay in every way and I love me. Again, you guys can slowly open your eyes. I can't say enough about meditation. If you guys don't do anything else, picking some form of meditation, putting your timer on for a minute is the most impactful thing you can do with addressing emotional eating. Because at the core, you have to remember your unconscious mind is 1,000,000 times stronger than your conscious mind. Your unconscious mind, we're acting off the unconscious or the subconscious 90 to 95% of the day. The unconscious mind is just a tape recorder and a filing system of thoughts that create certain behaviors or certain feelings that drive behaviors. So if you want to stop that whole cycle, we're used to focusing on the behavior and just trying to change it. And that doesn't work, does it? To get to the core, you have to pull the thoughts up by the root. The only thing that does that is meditation. The only thing. So your mind is a powerful thing. When you fill it with positive thoughts, your life will start to change. I'm talking from an experience. Binge eaters, the number of binge eaters that actually can change that behavior, it's such a small amount. I personally believe because they've never been taught how to meditate, how to be mindful. Meditation, I have even all this knowledge in nutrition, but meditation probably was the biggest thing that helped me change and not be a food addict anymore, not be a binge eater anymore. So I apologize. We went so late. I am going to look and see if there's any questions, anything that you guys wanted to know today. that I did not answer. So for the meditation, you know what? I say start, you can do it whatever you want. When I first started, I did it first thing when I woke up in the morning, and I did it right before I went to bed. And I started with, and I still do this, like I will think about what I'm going to eat for the next day, and I visualize going through it. I see myself eating the food, I see myself enjoying it, I see myself being satisfied. And when I do that, when I'm consistent, I almost always follow through, almost always. It's pretty amazing. How do we replay this? um so it's being recorded, and then what happens is Nathan will send out, usually on Facebook, I'm not sure if he sends an email out, but on Facebook, the recorded version. And if you guys are not already a member, NBC has a YouTube station. So if you join the YouTube station, you automatically get emailed every video I do, or every webinar I do. So I would highly recommend that you join the NBC YouTube station. Anything else? So hopefully, guys, work this new behavior. It might take you a week or so just to identify the feelings it's providing you, that unwanted pattern that you're trying to change. So, and that's okay. The key is that you become aware at some point. So wherever you guys are in this process, hopefully you'll leave today and actually start to become more aware of what you're doing. If you just go and say, oh, I'm going to do something different, you're doing the same thing you've always done, and normally that doesn't stick, okay? All right, you guys, have a fabulous day. I look forward to seeing you guys next month and hearing all about the meditations and how it's changing your life. Okay, bye.